This watch cost me just a little bit over $100, but I've worn it already over 500 times. When I was younger, I had a teacher that had an interesting point of view that he heard from a mentor of his. He said that every man needs two things: a nice suit and a good watch. And I kind of want to share with you today how you can get the nice watch that doesn't break the bank. Why does a watch matter? A watch is something that does more than tell time, in my opinion. A watch symbolizes who you are, that you put together, that you've kind of thought about it, and that you can kind of, you seem more organized. It represents the idea that you are more complete. As a guy, we kind of can't wear a lot of accessories, but the one thing that we can wear that we won't get chastised for is a nice watch. But just because you say don't have a massive budget doesn't mean you can't wear a nice watch, which is kind of why I want to take you through this process today and not just talk about this watch, why it's so great, but also how to get your own version of this watch. If you want, you can get this exact same watch as well. I'll provide information for that too. Don't worry. Watches, before I move on to my next point, watches are a conversation starter. Your manager, your boss, someone you work with in a corporate 9 to 5 sense will always notice a watch, and they might be into watches too. So it will start a whole conversation about kind of, something that a shared interest you might have, which will kind of, result in you potentially just having more of a connection or more of a way to express your style. And I want to go to the how to find your style of watch and all the style of what, not all, but most of the style of watches that are out there. So it's not just like kind of one watch, uh, you know, that you'd think. Is actually quite a lot of styles that you can choose from. And I kind of want to take you through, some of those styles and put some pictures up on the screen. So I guess like the most common watch that a lot of people think of is, say, a diving watch. And that can be informed by something as a lot of people know, like the Rolex Mariner. So what it is basically it's got lots of like visual markings around the bezel, which kind of divers use to measure time. And it's very bright from a luminescence point of view, so it glows in the dark, so they can kind of read the watch underwater when they're diving to know how much time's left on their water. So you've got diving watches as kind of like a really sporty watch, which is actually used to go underwater, right? You've got chronographers, which are watches that are really good at telling, say, measuring time, like measuring seconds and minutes. So for people that are, say, in the racing scene, that drive F1 cars, they used to use chronographers as well to measure time, and that's kind of like evolved the history of that. And they're a little bit thicker. They're not complicated, but they've got like two buttons on there to A, start the timer, and B, reset it, and then the bezel itself. So they kind of have that aesthetic to them as well. So think your, Rolex Daytona, Omega Speedmaster, and then also your Tag Heuer Carrera. And then you've got your field watches, which are watches literally for the field that were used in military. They're meant to be robust, lightweight. They've got a very simple, like very easy to read, hour, minute markers that, have a loom on them. And they're just, simply meant to be used and abused. They're not meant to be preserved. They're meant to be absolutely smashed. So they're kind of like that utilitarianism watch, like the everyman watch, so to speak. Then you've also got pilot watches, which back before pilots had advanced technology, they would use these watches to perform calculations for speed, time, how long flights were. They just did all these like very intricate calculations. So of course the watch has it's quite a busy watch, but it can actually serve a lot from a functionality point of view. And then I'd say you've got your dress watches, which is something that I'd say is like this, which is on either a bracelet or can be a leather strap. It's more on the thinner side. It's got a day and date indicator. And then you've also got, your GMTs, your Greenwich time zone, which is based in London. It's a central metric for how to measure time across the world. And basically the point of a GMT watch is it's got an additional hand on here. So you got hours, minutes, seconds, but there's another hand which tells you like another time zone. And some GMTs you can read up to 3 time zones on one watch. So say if you've got loved ones in another part of the world and you need to know their time, or you're traveling, The GMT is kind of great for that. So that's kind of like the different styles, and that can kind of dictate, well, are you someone who wears a suit, so you might like more of a dressy watch or a sporty watch that's more on the side of dressy? Are you someone that wears more jeans and a t-shirt that never really wears a suit, so a dressy watch is probably not going to look the part? So you got to think of like what your everyday situation is and how to better that, or how to best resemble that through the watch that you wear. See, for me, for context, I like to wear I'll wear a suit with a tie for my 9 to 5 job. Outside of work, I always like to wear some type of collared shirt. The most casual I go is like a polo shirt. So I'm always kind of dressing in that kind of like old money aesthetic with like loafers, boots. So I've kind of always look like I've kind of got like some type of shirt on. So for me, like a watch like this just works really, really well. It's not too sporty, and it just kind of fits the aesthetic more. So that's kind of why I gravitate more towards the dress types of watches. And within dress types of watches, there's like there's rectangular watches, which is called like tanks because they look like a tank from up top. So there's so many like different variations. So that's kind of why you should kind of start looking at like that and all these pictures, because you might realize, hey, I like the look of chronographers, or I like the look of dive watches, or I like pilot watches, I like field watches, or I like dress watches more. So you've got lots to start thinking about, because that kind of plays into the next point. So you've got to consider where you are. I'm 5'4", my wrist is about 6 inches across. So I kind of can't go many big watches, and a lot of dive watches are out for me because they're generally and chronographers too have like quite a big and thick and wide case diameter, which is like from here to here. That's the case diameter. So I guess if I was to give some tips for understanding where you sit in the ballpark, obviously measure your wrist and see what it is first and foremost. Then you can go on like websites that say your wrist, and it tells you like what the like type of watch case diameters you need to look for. But don't be fooled. So case diameters can be very misleading, because even if you've got a case diameter of these are called the lugs. These could stretch out really long or really short, so they can kind of mess up the proportions of how it would still fit on your wrist. So, for example, for me, this watch has a lug to lug of like either 43 or 44 mils. I'll find it out on the screen and chuck it up there for you. So that for me, and based on kind of when I put my details into, I think, an online watch calculator thingy, wrist sizing, it said like, don't go above like a certain lug to lug. And I can kind of see what it kind of means. Like, oh, okay, this watch doesn't look like a Ben 10 watch on me, or I look ridiculous. Like, it actually fits and looks appropriate. So that's another thing. Even though you might have a watch that's in a really nice style or really expensive, if it doesn't fit you, you'll look a bit out of place, and like it just something will look like off. Like people might not be able to pin it, but like that's kind of what that comes to. And then I think that will reflect in your confidence, and it kind of like it's all encompassing, like shopping itself. So I mentioned field watches, chronographers, GMTs, dress watches, pilot watches. If you're starting out and you don't have a big budget like I did, or I do, I'd recommend checking out the Seiko 5 line, which is what this watch is. It's called a Seiko 5, and it's part of that line. Now, Seiko 5 is interesting because it came out in the 1950s, I believe, by Seiko, and the 5 represents, it has to be automatic, meaning the watch is self-winding, so you don't need a battery in there. 2, it has to be able to tell day and date. 3, it has to have, I think it's 30 or 50 meters of water resistance. 4, I think it has to have all the crown, which is what changes the time, is always in a 4 o'clock position. And because of that they've been around since the 50s, there's about 2,000 or so styles to choose from. They cover, all the categories of watches you could absolutely imagine, which is actually pretty cool. So if you were to kind of start out and get, say, a Seiko 5, this one is a Seiko model SNKL 41. It's the white dial variant. Now, if you were to start, I'd recommend that you either get a white, silver, or navy dial, because that's going to be like the most plain and go with everything. I've got my first Seiko 5 was in a navy. It was okay, but I didn't understand the lug to lug as much, so it does look a little bit bigger on me, so I don't tend to wear it as much. And then I got this one, and then I got the third one. This one I wear the most. So the thing about Seiko 5s is they will be available in your city or state wherever you live, but they won't have every single model. So this one, for example, I had to buy on the internet. So that's why you have to know and research its lug to lug and know what your dimensions are that you're working with, so that if you do get it online, you know confidently it's going to fit you, which is like awesome, right? And then that takes me to my next point. So cool thing about Seiko 5s is, they've got a great level of detailing, finishing. They've got looms on there. They really go the extra mile on their watches. But one thing that they kind of focus all their efforts into is the case itself, like the main heart of the watch. The bracelets that they have, which I'll show on screen, what it actually comes out with, are okay, but they're not that fantastic. So this bracelet, for example, which is a kind of like a Jubilee style bracelet, and you can get other style bracelets like presidentials, oysters. I'll put these on screen. Grains of rice, I think they're called, are basically ways to improve the watch by putting a really nice strap on it. It's probably like one of the best, or bracelets, best upgrades you can make, because you take the Seiko 5 and being where it is to another level. Like the stock bracelet might make noises, might feel a bit light and just cheap. So by upgrading that, you kind of initially step it up. And that's kind of what I did. As soon as I got this, I just ordered a accompanying bracelet. And it's not that hard, because if you type up the, say, Jubilee style bracelet for a Seiko SNKL41, a lot of websites will say Seiko models they're compatible with for the bracelet. So you'll be able to know, okay, it's compatible with this one, no problem. And the cool thing about Seiko 5s is once you, say, for example, find a style you like in terms of the shape of the lug to lug, and so then it means it gives me confidence to know that I can get this and it just looks awesome. So it kind of allows you to experiment more at a lower budget. That's another thing I like about it. So, and it kind of putting it, and this is a like more presidential style bracelet, which looks a little bit different to how the Jubilee is. The middle bit is shiny, kind of like this bit too. So it just creates that really nice contrast and pop. So it's really like cool. And I guess an oyster bracelet for, so again, the middle's shiny, and see here how these lugs are a little bit sharper than these ones. I like the style of the more rounded lugs, which takes me to my next point. Like, what do you prefer? What type of design and aesthetic do you want the watch to look on you? Because you'll obviously be looking at that a lot, or you'll have it on your wrist and it will like play on your mind. So if I was to kind of put the blue one on, like you can see it still fits, but I feel compared to this, it feels a little bit more on the bigger side. I don't know, like, so I kind of don't wear it as much. To take it back, if you were to kind of follow this, I'd recommend A, knowing what your wrist is, B, looking at all these watches and kind of doing a bit of research for yourself, C, starting with a Seiko 5, because A, they're cheap. You can get like 3 Seiko 5s for, a couple $100 each. And then you can upgrade the bracelets. And if they're, say, for example, another bonus tip, the same case width, like the same width for the, what do you call it? I think it's the lug width of the bracelet, because this is the same distance from this one. It means this bracelet can be put on this and this bracelet can be put on here. Now, of course, for that, I think you can change the bracelet yourself. But if you go to any jeweler, any watch guy, they'll do it for you. And it kind of helps you start a relationship with them. So when you need like watches serviced or fixed, they can help you out. So I'd recommend getting the professionals to do it, and then also size. Another thing, when you get the bracelet, you have to size it to you correctly. So you kind of have to go in there anyway. So when you buy the watch, get the bracelet at the same time, do your research, so you upgrade it. When that all comes, take it all in together. So they'll do the swap out for you and they'll size it. So you've got a perfect watch ready to go. And the cool thing about these Seiko 5s is I see some people with Seiko 5s, but they've got more the ones that you can go into store and buy. I haven't seen a single person that has this type of Seiko 5 that I've met. So it actually kind of makes you stand out, because you've kind of thought really deeply about like the watch you want, and it's a good conversation starter. But I guess, yeah, so if you've enjoyed this type of video, subscribe and tell me what you think about watches. And I can do more like watch type of content because I like watches, I guess. So, happy to do more of that. I find this exciting to do this because I've like $100, but I've worn this watch, I reckon, easily over 500 times. Hit that, hit the like button and everything. And if you're ready to conquer mountains in a literal and figurative sense on the bike, then get a copy of Life Cycles and start your journey in transformation today for less than cost of Uber Eats order. So as I always say, conquer mountains, conquer life, and you'll be on time. Or I should say, but I guess to have the confidence of a good watch helps you to conquer the day and conquer life, especially in the corporate 9 to 5. Conquer mountains, conquer life. Thank you.